Hi, this is Bill with Net Golf League. Today I want to talk about the USGA rating system. When you're calculating a golf handicap, the rating system comes into effect pretty prominently. If you look at the basic ingredients of a handicap, you're taking some of your most recent rounds and adding into that calculation the difficulty of those rounds played to come up with a portable handicap index. And when you go to apply the handicap index against a particular course, you come up with a course handicap. So what exactly goes into figuring out how difficult a course is that you played on? Here you can see an example of a golfer that has played 20 rounds, and you can see there's three different courses they played on where the ratings, course rating and the slope rating are different. And on this particular course, it played probably the front nine one week and the back nine the next week. Those are used to come up with what's called a handicap differential, and you can get more details on how that is actually calculated in one of the other videos that talks about handicap indexes that I put out. But here's an overall calculation if you just to get an overall view of how that's calculated. It's basically adjusted gross score minus the course rating times 113, which is your average slope rating divided by the slope rating. So in this video, I wanted to focus on course rating and slope rating and how those are calculated or determined. So if you look at the USGA rating system, essentially they come up with a course rating, they come up with a bogey rating, and the difference between those two gets used to calculate what's called a slope rating. So if we look first at a sample scorecard, this is what you would see. Each tee having both a course rating and a slope rating. Now you can see right here that the one thing we are missing is the bogey rating. That's used to calculate the slope rating, but it's not necessarily ever shown on the scorecard. So if we look first at course rating, it's the definition of a course rating is the difficulty of a course for a scratch golfer. So if you're a par golfer, how difficult is a particular course? As you can see, I have a cross section of the scorecard here that shows the course rating. It differs by tee. The higher the course rating for a particular tee, the more difficult that tee is. So how do they come up with a course rating? Well, there's different things that come into play. The two major things are effective playing length and obstacles. And effective playing length takes into consideration two things. One is basically how long is a hole. And the second thing is what kind of elevation changes are there? Are you going uphill? Are you going downhill? Is it flat essentially? That's going to affect how long a hole plays. As far as obstacles go, there are 10 categories. Water hazards, bunkers, how small are the greens, how narrow are the fairways, are there a lot of trees. All those things get taken into consideration when coming up with a rating on those 10 categories. And both of those factors get calculated, or both of those factors are taken into consideration when coming up with a course rating. Now, bogey rating is how difficult a course is for a bogey golfer. As I said, it's not typically found on a scorecard, but is used and is essential in calculating the slope rating. So let's take a look at the slope rating. Slope rating is the difference between a course's difficulty for an average bogey golfer compared to a par golfer or scratch golfer. So, and that's why it's called a slope. A particular course might be relatively easy for a par golfer, but relatively hard for a bogey golfer based on how long each hits a driver on average, and other factors that are taken into consideration. So that slope can vary, and that is expressed in an integer form from 55 to 155. Again, each tee is assigned its own slope rating. The higher slope rating, the more difficult the tee, and 113 average is the average slope rating for any course. And you can see below here, it's pretty easy calculation. There's a multiplier for men and a multiplier for women. And essentially it's a difference between the bogey and course rating to come up with your slope rating. I just want to come back to the handicap differential slide just to show you basically how adjustments in some of these variables affect the overall handicap differential on a given round. So if you take this as your base calculation, you scored a 40, the course rating was a 33.3, and you had an average slope rating, you're going to have a handicap differential of 6.7. But if you adjust and say the course was, the second course you played was much more difficult, you scored the same, and the course rating was the same, your actual handicap differential is going to go down because it was a much harder course. Same goes for if your course rating is adjusted up. And then if you look at the fourth example here, I've actually scored worse, everything else being the same. My handicap differential is going to go up. So it gives you a little comparison of how the difficulty affects your handicap differential. And of course that handicap differential gets used to calculate a portable handicap index, and that in turn gets used to calculate a course handicap. So I hope that helps out. Please take a look at the other videos to get a further explanation on how a handicap index is calculated and how that is used and applied to a course for course handicap. And also please check out our handicapper. You can fool around with it on Net Golf League's main page. There's a handicapper link on the home page that you can try out, and we have a free 21-day trial if you want to try out our subscription service. Thanks.